There's some interesting information that's come out on spending on the part of members of Congress on their private security. So we're talking here about members of Congress going above and beyond the security that they normally get, particularly in public facilities, public buildings, and so on, and hiring private firms, often at considerable expense. And guess who are the biggest spenders in this department? Answer: the leftists, the squad. The people who call loudest for defund the police are the ones who spend themselves the most on private security to protect themselves. And so what you have here is a situation where these guys are, listen, the citizens don't need protection, but we do. And of course, the assumption is we're important. We are more deserving. We are people who make a difference. This was exactly what Representative Cori Bush said when she was asked about this. She basically said, well, yeah, we got to defund the police, but that doesn't mean me. That doesn't mean my private security. I'm a really important person after all. Let's remember that this group, we're talking here about Cori Bush, we're talking about AOC, we're talking about Ilhan Omar, we're talking about Jamal Brown. These are people who support the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which basically passed the House, but it stalled in the Senate. They support the Breathe Act, which goes further than the George Floyd Act and actually calls for getting rid of a bunch of federal law enforcement agencies. They've also talked about ending immunity, qualified immunity for policemen, so it becomes easier for citizens to sue not just cops, but also state and local officials, but primarily the police. And these are the very people, while pushing these laws on the one side, who are making sure that their lives, their safety, are carefully assured on the other by putting out cash, and sometimes campaign cash, taxpayer money, or money that's donated to them. They're using it to protect themselves. Now, in the case of Jamal Bowman, he contacted the Yonkers Police Department, and he basically said, listen, I want added security for my house. And this was a little too much for Keith Olson, who's the Yonkers Police Benevolent Association president. He goes, asking these same police officers to protect your family while creating policies that make communities of color less safe is simply disgraceful. So here's a guy who's pushing to cut police protection for other people, but wants more for himself. AOC, $45,000 on private security in the first quarter of this year. She spent when she came to Houston to talk about hurricane relief, she hired a private security firm in Houston, paid them $1,500 to go around with her, make sure nothing happens to her. When Ocasio-Cortez went to Virginia, she hired Tullis Worldwide Protection, which is run by a guy who used to be a private military contractor with Blackwater. And this is a guy who's he says, hey, listen, you want to know who we hire? Well, we don't hire social workers, let me tell you that. So AOC knows that when it comes to her own security, she basically wants the best. Same with Ayanna Pressley, same with Ilhan Omar. These are people who, by and large, are very solicitous of their own security. Look at Cori Bush. Cori Bush is somebody who has spent the most money, $70,000, on her own protection. And that's about a third of her whole second quarter campaign expenses. And most of it goes to RS&T Security Consulting, which is basically a New York firm specializing in providing armed private security. So are we dealing with hypocrisy here? Yes, we are, but something more than that. We're dealing with the idea that we are, the Democrats, the squad, we are the overlords. To them, this is really what socialism means. It doesn't really mean equality. It means the exact opposite. It means we create two classes of people in which there's a kind of ruling elite, that's us. We live by one set of rules, and we ask the citizens, the lower people, the peasants, to live by another. We'll leave them exposed, naked, vulnerable, and we will make sure that our interests, our lives, our families are well protected.